It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Folks, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. I want to go through Ricoh's first quarter. You know, Ricoh has a tagline, Imagine Change. I came up with a new tagline for you, Ricoh. Imagine a change in operating profit. You know, I believe if you're not there in your mind first, you'll never be there in person. If you're not there in your mind first, you'll never be there in person. And I believe that if the Ricoh leadership team, if the Ricoh board of directors could actually visualize producing operating profit in the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 percentile ratio, maybe they could actually achieve it. If they could see it in their mind, maybe they would build plans to achieve it. But it seems like they don't care. They're excited. Hey, if we could get a 3%, that's a home run. Let's have a party. It's almost disturbing. As I go through the first quarter of Ricoh's financials, I want to share some details around their IT services business. And folks, when these OEMs put these financial presentations on their websites in the investors section, right? You know, they can really try to make them as complicated as possible. They can show stuff on one slide and hope that's all you read. You don't go to the other slide and dig into it. And I wanted to really dig into this IT services space and come up with some numbers. Where are they doing this in the geographies around the world? And why the hell can't they make any money doing it? Because, you know, Ricoh's services part of their business is a huge amount of money. And for some reason, it's extremely unprofitable. And that's an issue. Especially for a company that aspires to be a digital services company. That's what they're telling the whole world. We want to be a digital services company. Well, if the whole world goes to their investor relations tab, pulls out the presentation, and goes to the page or the slide that talks about digital services, they would be horrified. They'd be like, oh shit, don't become that. I mean, hey, that's a growing business, but you're not making any money in it. Maybe you should focus on making stuff. So without any further ado, let's jump on the board. Ladies and gentlemen, Topline revenue is $3.9 billion for the first quarter. Operating profit of $43.4 million. 1.1%. Big home run for Ricoh. 1.1%. I couldn't even color in the $43.4 million all in green because it's so pitiful. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to go back in time, 2019 all the way through 2023. Look at these operating profits. You can see it quarter by quarter. And when you look at the year-end operating profit ratio, 3.9% in 2019. That was one of their highest ones ever, right? I mean, come on. You got 2020, they fell off a cliff, global pandemic. You know, when organizations are not rifle-focused and disciplined on profitability, when there's a disastrous environment outside of their conditions, if you will, conditions outside of their control, guess what? They fall victim to it because they're not disciplined enough to focus on the realities of operating profit and profitability, to understand their true cost, to be able to shift those costs around when they need to, when things go to hell. And in 2020, the world went to hell, and so did Ricoh's numbers. 2021, they had a 2.3% operating profit. 2022, 3.7%. 2023, 2.6%. Their forecast is 2.8%. I can't even imagine the meeting they have in the boardroom to talk about their forecast for the next year. I mean, what do? The leader gets together with all the department heads, right? I need that numbers. They all get together, they total it up, and they say, okay, we're going to have a 2.8% operating profit for FY24. And they accept that? I would think that's when they'd be throwing pens down, throwing papers all over the boardroom, breaking shit, screaming. What in the hell? Go back to the drawing board, fix this. We're not going to have a 2.8% operating profit. That's what I'm thinking they would be doing. But obviously they don't do that over there at Ricoh. I pulled this up. Key points about performance during term. Let me just read some of this stuff to you. Sales rose, but earnings declined in line with internal plans. Sales rose, but earnings declined in line with internal plans. I suggest you change the internal plans to consider maybe growing earnings, right? Ricoh Digital Services. Office services contributed to earnings growth with steady reoccurring revenues. Office services contributed to earnings growth with steadily reoccurring revenues. I would like to know what the reoccurring revenues are exactly. What are they exactly? And what's the profitability on these reoccurring revenues? Because there's a lot of project work going on inside this office services. And when you look at the digital services business group, ladies and gentlemen, it was 0.18% operating profit. And it's kind of disturbing. because they want to be a digital services company. Ricoh Digital Products boasted earnings on production, adjustment, recovery, and enhanced product mix, established ETRA, the joint venture with Toshiba Tech, making machines. That's what OEMs do pretty well, right? They make machines. We'll see how that goes. Ricoh Graphic Communications revenues and earnings rose, primarily growth in non-hardware sales. Growth was in the non-hardware sales at the Ricoh Communications revenues, and we all know Ricoh Graphic Communications, that's the big stuff, production print stuff, industrial print stuff. Remember the article I shared a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about at Drupa they had 200 orders? Well, apparently, according to this, those orders were for toner. People showed up at the Drupa booth and said, hey, I don't need the machine, but if you have toner on sale, I'll buy some of that. Just asking the question. Ricoh Industrial Solutions thermal business recovered. Recovered from what? Ladies and gentlemen, here's what I'm going to say really quick here. Excuses and unrealistic optimism will not increase operating profit by any stretch of the imaginations. And I got to say, really, to this stock purchase plan, what the hell? Let's buy back some shares. Let's increase the value of our shares by buying back our own stock. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to get people excited about you on the stock market? Well, go into the marketplace and get people excited about what you deliver and then share with them how much money you're making off what you deliver. You want to freak people out of the stock market? Talk about you want to become a digital services company and then show on your financials you can't make any money in that area. That'll scare the crap out of your shareholders, okay? Just some advice from old Ray in the basement. Ricoh Digital Products, top-line revenue was $840.6 million. They had an operating profit of $31.7 million, 3.7%. And this is where they make the products, right? This is that joint venture with Toshiba Tech. 3.7% operating profit on $840.6 million in revenue. Let's look at Ricoh Graphic Communications. Industrial commercial print. Top-line revenue was $476 million. Commercial printing was $401.6 million. Industrial printing was $74.4 million. Industrial printing, I've been saying it about Ricoh, I've been saying it about Konica. Why are these folks even in that business? Why in the world are they even in the business? That run rate, they're going to do what? Little less than $300 million a year? And ladies and gentlemen, all this Drupa talk, it really drives me out of my mind because there's really no details. Just like Konica. Let's brag about all the orders we took, but let's not give any kind of details to those orders. I'll give them this. In the Ricoh Graphic Communications, they had an operating profit of $34.5 million, 7.3%. I guess the toner they were selling at Drupa was going out with some pretty good margin in it, right? I'm hoping so. But when you look at this industrial printing of $74.4 million, you think about Drupa, it's pretty weighted heavily in the industrial print space, right? And this is what they say about Drupa. Drupa 2024 proved very successful, generating many orders, including more than 200 high-speed inkjet printers and strategic Ricoh Pro 7500 and 9500 series. I got to say, what in the hell did you actually sell? What were the 200 orders for? Inkjet, high-speed inkjet printers. Did you sell that Pro VC 40,000? Did you sell a bunch of those? Who was the buyer? Was it a dealer, a distributor? Was it an end user? You see what happens when you don't put any details, you throw all this crap out there? I'm thinking you had a distributor that would have bought all this stuff from you anyway, that showed up at Drupa because you gave them some kind of a discount. Maybe when all those orders hit the books, because I seriously doubt if they all hit the books this first quarter, but when they do hit the books, are we going to see a drop in the operating profit? I can't wait till second and third quarter to see if that happens. But ladies and gentlemen, let's look at this digital services. In the digital services business unit, they have office services, which is all the IT stuff they do, and they have office printing, hardware and non-hardware. But when you look at the office services, $1.4 billion for the first quarter. $1.4 billion. To put that in perspective, Konica Minolta and their DWDX for their first quarter did $154.1 million. Think about that. Look how much bigger in this IT services, if you will, services outside of the hardware of print equipment. Look how much bigger Ricoh is than Konica Minolta. $1.4 billion to $154.1 million. But ladies and gentlemen, this digital services business unit did 0.18% operating profit. It's disgusting. You got a company running around the world talking about they want to be a digital services company. You go to their financials, you pull up the slide, you freak out. What the hell? Don't do this. Stop doing it. Stop growing services business. Seriously, tell us the operating profit of this reoccurring revenue that you're bragging about. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a problem. There's a fundamental problem in this business unit. And I believe that fundamental problem is this. It's a classic chasing revenues at all cost. Let me read to you what they say right at the top of this slide. Well, reoccurring revenues remain steady. Earnings declined owing to weak office printing hardware sales. Owing to weak office printing hardware sales. They're talking about the earnings are declining based on the fact that they had weak office printing sales. What the hell? That should be irrelevant when you think about this group. When you think about office services, you're out there selling your intellect. You're out there selling services. There should be such great margin in that you easily can produce operating profit. For some reason, Ricoh is so focused on this hardware stuff. They didn't make any money because they didn't sell any hardware. Hell, we all know if we sell print hardware, there's no money in that. That's like the lowest hanging fruit, right? This is really, really disturbing at so many levels. Here's another thing that's disturbing. Office printing is $1.5 billion. Office services is $1.4 billion. The total revenue for the group is $3.1 billion. It's going to be very soon that office services revenue exceeds that of office printing. And unfortunately, Ricoh hasn't figured out how to deliver these services profitably. And that's a scary thing. Because I believe they're chasing revenue at all costs. I believe they're running around gobbling up all these acquisitions, hoping things work out. And when they don't work out, they say it's because they had weak office printing hardware sales. It's really, really crazy. I wanted to break it out by geographies. And folks, this is a complicated slide. And I urge all of my friends to go to the Ricoh Investors Relations tab and go through this stuff. You know, it takes a long time to put this stuff together, to get your head around it, because they put it on so many different slides. But I wanted to put it together because I wanted to see where the revenue was coming from in the world. We know in Japan, both Ricoh, Fujifilm is another one. They sell a lot of Scrum packages, Scrum services over there in Japan. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just read to you how they defined IT infrastructure, IT services, application services, business process services, and workplace experience, which used to be the communications group. Listen to me and bear with me on this because it's an important message, and there's something in here that's telling us the problem at Ricoh. Major business activities in each segment. IT services. In IT services, we have IT infrastructure and we have IT services. IT infrastructure, selling hardware and software for building IT environments and providing security services, mainly purchases. So when I see IT infrastructure revenue, what I see in my mind is a bunch of hardware going out the door with very low margin, right? We're selling a bunch of computers or whatever. It's mainly purchases. It's not reoccurring revenue. Let's talk about IT services within IT services. IT services, installing, constructing, operating, and maintaining IT environments and security services. When I see that definition, when I analyze that definition, I see that as recurring revenue. Those are the IT services that have reoccurring revenue. Process automation. In the process automation area of services, we have application services and business process services. Application services, installing, constructing, operating, maintaining in-house and purchase application software. It's all the software stuff. In-house, DocuWare. All the software that they sell inside Ricoh. Their own and stuff they might acquire from somebody else, but they go into the marketplace and sell it. When I look at business process service, commission business for customer output centers and new services tapping customer base. Business process services, when I see that definition, I think about them running a big print shop, maybe at a college or a university or something. They're doing services, facilities management type services. And then workplace experience used to be the communications sector, so that's around telephony, voice over IP, and those types of services. But when you look in the Japanese market, 56% of IT infrastructure's revenue comes from Japan. 56% of the revenue for IT infrastructure comes from Japan. In the Americas, it's only 3%. When you look at IT services, 52% of the revenue is coming out of the Japan marketplace. In the Americas, it's 7.5%. When you look at application services, 59% of the revenue is coming out of the Japanese marketplace. only 14.5 is coming out of the Americas. Business process services, this is what we do in Americas regarding digital services from Ricoh. 77% of the revenue is coming from America for business process services, and 24% of the revenue is coming from America for workplace experience or the communications group. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Ricoh is out there reselling software solutions, doing a whole bunch of project work, and they don't have enough profit. They haven't defined their cost good enough, and it's killing them. And the more they do this project work, the more they go out there and give away their intellect, the more they're going to lose. I mean, when you think about the office services business doing a total of $1.4 billion in revenue and coming in with a 0.18% operating profit, that's not a good thing by any stretch of the imagination. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Ricoh has to focus on what are they going to be. Because if they keep telling the world they want to be a digital services company and they're producing revenues like this and they're not really separating it out and sharing some more details and showing how that reoccurring revenue is actually really profitable or showing how this project work is really profitable, no one will ever take them serious as a digital services company. You can see all the acquisitions they made. Let's go buy our growth. Let's go buy up a whole bunch of different companies, try to put all these companies together. Sounds a lot like Konica Minolta and what they did here in the Americas with All Covered. And of course, Konica Minolta, they're still not sharing any details of that. They just talk about knocking it out of the park. Yeah, you sure are knocking it out of the park, but they're all foul balls. And folks, I got to tell you, I don't believe that you can grow a global IT services company by buying up a whole bunch of little companies, medium-sized I just don't believe you can do it. And when I look at the numbers, I have to conclude that what I believe is true. When I look at what's going on at Konica Minolta, I have to believe what I believe is true. Because neither Ricoh or Konica Minolta can produce any substantial operating profit. Both Konica Minolta and Ricoh talk about a lot of stuff, but they don't back any of that stuff up with any real facts or numbers. And they both seem to have a whole lot of excuses. Let's talk about their asset to equity ratio, 47.2%, meaning 52.8% of Ricoh's assets are encumbered. You know, their total assets are $16.1 billion. They have goodwill and intangible assets of $3 billion, 19%, way too high. They talk about their liabilities are slated for some divestments. They talk about their assets are slated for some divestments. What are these divestments going to be? Is there going to be another impairment charge coming? But folks, I just don't understand. I mean, if Ricoh wants to be a digital services company, they better take it more serious around the profitability. Their outlook, $17.3 billion in top-line revenue. They want a $484.3 million operating profit of 2.8%. It's not near enough. Go back to the drawing board. Get everybody back together. Everyone that runs these divisions, put them in a room and say, we're coming back with 4% operating profit and do whatever the hell you got to do to get us there. Can you imagine if they did that? They'd probably get the 4 or 5% operating profit. But they'd also have to make some pretty damn tough decisions. And apparently, the leadership at both Konica Minolta and Ricoh are fearful to make tough decisions, is what I'm thinking. You want to be a digital services company? Prove to the damn world you can actually make money in digital services. Because Ricoh, as soon as you cross the line, as soon as you produce more revenue in digital services than you do in the product section of this group, guess what? The world's going to be watching really, really hard. The scrutinization is going to come on you like nothing you've ever seen. And I'll keep an eye on it too. Because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that will be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.